hello, and welcome back to the Proving Grounds, where the streets are covered in blood, and the beasts are roaming again, and the nightmare begins again. But this time, we're not talking about simple old Bloodborne. This time, we are talking about the Game of the Year edition, or specifically, the Old Hunters DLC. But just to talk about the Game of the Year edition real quick, it is not available in America and Canada, sadly. You will have to get a European copy if you want an English version, or if you don't care, as to be fair, a lot of the game can be played and navigated pretty simply playing the Japanese version, especially if you're very familiar with the game. But if you want it in English, you'll have to get the European copy physically. But it is, of course, available digitally, and we'll get into price points as we get to that point. So, the Old Hunters DLC. The Old Hunters DLC, story-wise, adds a little more knowledge to some of the hunters you learn in the base game. Like Ludwig Lawrence, who is a prominent figure among the hunter that Gorm mentions or knows of, that the doll was based of. You learn of their fates and more about them, along with a few other old hunters. So the idea of the old hunters is it is supposed to be the old days twisted into a nightmare, and you'll find many twisted foes in it. It begins when you get a little portion of the base game done. You'll be given a key item by one of the little, what do they call the little wardens, I believe they are, the little nightmare wardens, or whatever they were called. The messengers, that's what they were called. Yes, I know now. The messengers. The messengers will give you a key item that allows you access, and you have to go to the Cathedral Ward, and if you know what a little top hat is, you have to let the Alidama grab you there, and you can enter the DLC from there. Now, the DLC, I would say about half of it is kind of taking some of the territory from the base game and twisting it into the Cthulhu themeness of the later half of the game. So you'll be trending through a few familiar areas that are destroyed, twisted, demolished, but you'll get to a point where things start getting really different into the straight out new. So it reuses a bit of assets, and I don't necessarily mind that, especially in the beginning, because it kind of makes you start in a familiar ground and just slowly twist it into a demolishing state of a completely different environment by the end of the DLC. Now, you're looking at getting 5 bosses, 4 main bosses for the story of the Old Hunter, with 1 side boss that's optional. You're getting a decent number of new weapons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 new weapons you're getting, along with 5 new guns, which actually one of them isn't necessarily a gun, it's actually a shield/bow. So there's a few unique, interesting new tools to mess with in this game. On top of that, there are a few new little items and, of course, key items and things like that. But interesting, also note, there are 2 covenants. Now, they're not full-blown covenants. They stay as a very side thing. And there was also a point to note, while not part of the Old Hunters DLC, there was a free patch DLC that added a covenant called the League, which is basically the jolly old sun covenant shining in through bucket heads. The League is all about jolly cooperation, helping people, but it is free, so if you get the base game, you actually get it through a patch. But the 2 new covenants that were added are the Beast and the Kin. The Kin are the weird little shiny alien, the other lordly Cthulhu things you see in both the base and DLC. You can turn into a strange version of them and have Kinish powers, and the Beast allows you to turn into a beast and have slight beast's aspects to yourself, and I didn't really mess with these two. They seemed kind of tacked on to me, but using some, like, there's a special item, the kin, you have to be in the kin covenant to specifically use. It's a really powerful magic item of that. So, I mean, there's some interesting ideas you can do with them, but I didn't necessarily mess with them much. They seemed more like kind of gimmicky ideas to do than like full, because even when I played this, I didn't see many people mess with them, but more with the kin than the beast, to be honest, how people have seen messed with them. But no additions. On top of that, there were many new NPCs that were added with the League patch and with Kalos out in this into the game, so that gives you some additional help in that aspect. Now, area-wise, really the DLC breaks down to 4 areas, and like I said, about half the DLC is a twisted version of a section in the base game around the cathedral area, and then later on you get to a clock tower aspect, and then the next area is a completely fresh new area where you fight the final boss of the DLC. And of course, you know, with the new weapons also, they're all new armor sets. I'm not going to go into all of them since armor wasn't as big of a thing in Bloodborne. It's more of a fashiony thing, more so in this, since it didn't affect your stats too drastically. But there are a number of sets that add even more gorgeous fashion to the game. Oh, yes. Now, when it comes to aspects with co-op and PvP and that, nothing was really added outside of, you know, more equipment. There wasn't any game-changing items or arenas or anything added into the game like with Dark Souls 1 added a arena-esque system and that. So nothing like that for those looking for more jolly reasons to do more online outside the norm of just evading, killing, and helping. All that aspects are still the same. But overall, I really enjoyed the Old Hunters. I know some people were a little mixed out, I'll be honest. Like, probably still one of the most favorite FromSoft game, one of the favorite FromSoft DLCs. Most people love Atticusmj's DLC in Dark Souls 1. And narratively, it's probably one of the most talkative story aspect ones, and there are new NPCs to talk to in the Old Hunters, but it's still left to be very vague and needing to figure out what's going on in it, not so talkative as the Kalos in the Artorias DLC. And that's a criticism I've heard a few times about the Old Hunters. Now, the Old Hunters, while you get access to it pretty early in the base game, if you know exactly what to do to get into it, it actually is pretty challenging. It is a very good challenge. I definitely give it a good difficulty. It's not a bunch of... It doesn't feel like a bunch of rehash stuff so much with some of the side bosses that were in the Dark Souls 2 DLC. The final bosses of the DLC for Dark Souls 2 was pretty good, but some of the extra, like, they reused oh, what was that? That weird boss with the sword, and like the core gets harder and harder, so by being near it, it gives you like a dot effect on you. I hated that fucking boss. I think about it, everyone hates that damn boss, honestly. Probably go down history as one of the worst bosses with the bit of chaos. But I enjoyed all the bosses, and I was really nice to talk about one of the weapons that I got to use was the Holy Moonlight Sword, which was something that was incredibly sad to not see in the base game, but very welcomed in the DLC. It's a very fun weapon to mess with, specifically. But overall, all of the weapons add a few different new ideas and strategies, and some uniqueness to the game, since probably one of the lacking aspects when it comes to PvP, while I would still argue Bloodborne is one of the most balanced Souls games in PvP, just because there is less customization to your weapons versus all the other titles. With there's just all kinds of ways you can modify them. There's a more limitation to it, so it makes making zany builds kind of more trickier in Bloodborne. So you're getting a lot of new tools that can add some more ideas to your arsenal, though, when it comes to PvP. Because you do have to buy the DLC and go get these things, because you can't give the weapons to people and stuff in Bloodborne, so there's no way to get these without getting the DLC. But honestly, for what you're getting, like, you're looking at about like 8 to 10 hours depending on your skill and level and when you go in, whether you go in early or you go in really late, high level. It's a pretty decent sized DLC. I really enjoyed it, but when it comes to the price, it can be a little subjective. But before I get to one last thing I want to really note in this is, unlike every FromSoft DLC, the odd thing happened with this one. It has trophy support. Every other FromSoft's DLC never had a unique trophy support given to it. Now, like with the Skull of the Fourth Sin for Dark Souls 2, like they incorporated, like getting all the spells, they incorporated the new spells into that trophy, but they never gave them unique trophies when they were out as separate DLC. But oddly enough, the Old Hunters breaks that, even though Dark Souls 3's DLC did not continue that, but you do get trophies. So if you're a trophy hunter, you can actually be like, oh, I'll get this, because it actually has trophies, if that's your only subjective thing that may determine whether you buy this or not. Of course, for those like us who don't may care, or just may view them as little extras, it has them. So, before I get into spoilers, I'll talk about the price points of what I vary. I think this is at least a good $15, but if you're going to get it as a download, it does cost $19.99. The reason I would give it more 15, some people might even argue more like 10. You could probably wait for a sale for the Old Hunters. I think 20 might be just a bit much myself, because while it does add, it enriches the base story, but as a separate entity, it's just kind of lacking its own identity in a way. It just doesn't. I have to sadly use the Artorias thing, that it just doesn't feel like its own separate, unique. And what's funny, you can argue the exact same thing with Artorias. Artorias' story enriches the base story of Dark Souls 1, and I just feel like you're not getting as much in the Old Hunters aspect in that to make it a standalone price, especially considering when we get into the prices for the Game of the Year edition that make it interesting if you've never bought Bloodborne in its basis at all. So if you're looking to get the physical version of this game and not get as a download, because as a download you need the base game, which actually, what is the base game's current price? The base game, why looking that up real quick, because actually I don't know if they changed the base price down any on the store, but if you're getting the European Complete Edition, you're looking at, okay, so Bloodborne, oh yeah, because it's PlayStation hits, they lowered the base game to $19.99, so actually you're basically paying $40 if you buy them both as downloads. Now, if you're wanting to get the physical version, the Game of the Year edition, you're looking between about 20 to 40, 50-ish price tags, depending on whether you want new, used. I see them like eBay, they're literally all over the place. I see copies that are floating mostly between 30 to 50s. There's even some, there's like two listed as a 90 and 80. Ridiculous, honestly. But there's two listings currently at 20 range, 22, 24. So it's kind of floating around that range. if you want to get a complete edition. And as you saw with the price tags, as I said, the base game is $19.99 and the DLC is $19.99 as downloads. Now, you can get the base game's physical edition cheaper than that. You can get around like 10 or even lower if you look really well. But still, you'll basically getting the two together, you're looking around that price tag. So honestly, I would just say get the Game of the Year edition physically myself, unless you just want it as soon as possible, because obviously, you know, you're going to wait for shipping time depending on where it's coming from, whether it's somebody who actually has it in America or it's coming from overseas, so you're likely going to be waiting a few days, but that's a decision on your own terms. Now, you might want to ask, is there anything you need to be concerned about that's different if you get the European version of Bloodborne's Game of the Year edition? If you watch a lot or get into a lot of discussions about lore, you may have learned of different translations of some of the lore and item descriptions. There are a few noteworthy ways of describing a few things that are different between the European and American version that have led to interesting theories and lore discussions. Like around the ability cord, there was a Pacific line in it that is slightly different between the two versions, but gameplay wise there's nothing. It's in English and it is just very small little tidbits that might be worded a little different for a different meaning or could be interpreted differently. That nothing drastic in the end as a just game playing and being able to understand the story aspect of the game. So I would recommend getting the Game of the Year edition unless you just want immediately. But those are the prices. I think the game is a good, the DLC's, specifically the DLC is a good $15 value. I still really enjoyed it. Like I said, you're likely going to at least get around 10 hours, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more if you have more challenge, if you have more problems. Because some people say some of the bosses are probably the hardest bosses in the entire game of Bloodborne. So, of course, a very subjective thing. I definitely think the last one was a very good challenge. So, to end that part and go into spoilers for those who want to know my opinion on some of the in-game-ish parts, not to spoil the fun bits, this is where we part ways for those who don't want the spoily bits. So let's go on through the clock tower. So the clock tower is where things start separating from familiar territory to getting weird, and past the clock tower you're into the fishing hamlet, which is like the most Cthulhu fucking shit in this game. Those who play the base game who know about like, what is it, about 60-75% mark of the game, it starts getting super mega fucking Cthulhu crazy shit in Bloodborne, going from werewolf beasts to fucking alien demented third dimension thinking. It's really bizarre. It was really a strange thing to see back in the day when the game first came out. The fishing hamlet continues more Cthulhu-esque things as you'll fight the final boss at the end, Orphan of Coast. This creature is relentlessly quick and monstrously strong. I've seen countless other people fight this thing, and it is pretty unmerciless, honestly. It is just, it's vicious. It's a very good test of challenge for Bloodborne players. Now, I did see a few cheeses. Of course, most bosses always have some kind of way you can figure out some cheeses, but it is still a pretty tough boss, honestly, and I really actually liked it. I think it only took me 3 tries to kill it. I believe I'd have to go back to watch. I don't remember it taking too many, but it was still a good challenge. Overall, there was a nice handful of new enemies, and that there's still took some old enemies and did a few mix ideas and a few troll ideas, but there are some new enemies in here, especially in the fishing hamlet is where you specifically see a lot of new ones. Well, to be fair, in the beginning portions are more a few rehashes with like beastmen and that mixed with some new hunter killers and such. Overall, though, considering it added a lot on, I believe her name was Maria, if I remember correctly, who is the boss of the clock tower, who's also a very challenging fight as well. Maria's basically fulfills the hunter boss role, where Casa's is like the crazy insane giant monster thing, to put simply. But they are both very good challenges, tests of your might. Ludwig, seeing what happened, because like I said, you won. Maria's the hunter that the doll was based off of. Lawrence, you get the lawn of. Ludwig, you also get the lawn of. It's interesting that you get to find out what happened to some of the old hunters that you won in the base game, and because I remember there were vastly different lore theories about Lawrence way before the DLC ever was even known to even exist, that dramatically changed theories because of now knowing what happened to Lawrence. So it doesn't necessarily it's not like a big game changer, but it leads to some interesting theories, like a lot of people feeling that the Orphan of Kos was essentially the beginning of all this shit that happened in Bloodborne. There's some different interpretations of the idea of how it began, or relevance towards the main story in that regard, but that's, to your own degree to come to, or watch whole videos over that. But either way, I feel like The Old Hunters is a worthy DLC to check out, whether you feel that it's worth the $19.99 price tag or try to look for it on a sale, or if you don't have Bloodborne at all, because like I said, if you're buying them separate, I would just get the collector's edition, the Game of the Year edition from Europe. But those will all lie on your personal preferences and prices and that. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Bloodborne: The Old Hunters DLC. If you feel like you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below on YouTube or send me a message on Twitch. If you feel like you learned anything interesting about this video, please feel free to leave a like on YouTube. If you feel like you learned nothing at all, feel free to leave a dislike. Guilt-free. And until next time, hopefully you'll all stay safe out there in the nightmare as we put this to rest. Until next time, be safe out there, my dear hunter.
どうだった？私の作った朝ごはん。感想だよ。感想。そうか、そう